So check this out. This is my hickory bunker, and I'm seeing a lot of difference in both first flush of growth. So this is T92, and the first flush of growth on T92 was great, really tall, really solid, multiple leaflets. Like that has 3 solid leaflets. Sometimes they throw 5, I believe, occasionally. The shagbark type seedlings stay a lot smaller. This has a lot of pecan in it, but the T92 doesn't, it appears it doesn't cross with pecan, because there's this, or bitternut, because these are pure pecans. They put on 1 flush of growth with 1 leaflet. Now they're putting on a second flush, almost all reliably. See how they're all taller? This is the first year only. Second flush of growth has multiple leaflets, up to 5 plus. Here's a 7 leaflet. And yeah, so they're all pushing second flushes. Then we look at the other Hicans. This might be useful in figuring out which cross was made for each Hican, because I'm looking for certain crosses. I want, hybrid by hybrid, potentially in certain plants. I want to back cross to a shagbark or a bitternut, something a little bit more prone to doing well in the north. And so here's Country Club, and Country Club seems to be one of the Hicans that, it's a very pecan-y like plant, and it probably is crossing unreliably with the pecan. There were pecans in the Spurgeon population where I got this from, and you can see that a lot of the Country Club in this row are popping up and doing a second flush of growth. That's actually pretty rare across the rest of the Hicans. The shellbarks are not doing second flushes, at least yet. It could later. It's currently end of July. And another thing I'm seeing, kind of noticing, is that the bitternut, the pH in here is really high because I irrigate with lime water and because the soil is heavily amended with compost, and that boosts the pH. Some of the individual parents don't seem to like it. Like Hanky seemed to have a little yellower leaves at the beginning. So did all the heavy bitternut genetic germplasm. But the Hanky seems to be doing the pecan thing where it's putting on a second flush of growth, as do a lot of the bitternuts. So here's some bitternuts from, well, only 2 came up, but here's 2 bitternuts from Jesse, bitternut hybrids from Jesse Markson, heavy on the bitternut side, both putting on second flushes of growth. There's a tree called, from Weschke's, called Beaver Seedling. This is the road. They're all yellow, which seems to be the bitternut genetics coming out, but a lot of them are putting on second flushes, and these are shag bitternut hybrids. Whereas you see, these are all shagbark bitternut hybrids from Badger Set, and none of them are. The genetics at Badger Set are so pushed towards shagbark that we're just not getting any second flushes, which, if I were to see a second flush from Badger Set genetics, I'd be like, that's interesting. That would be one worth flagging and planting out. That said, you see a lot of variance, even in these single leaflets. Is an interesting trait because that shows on pecans. Shagbarks seem to have 3 leaflets pretty solidly in their first flush of growth, and they only do 1 flush. Generally is what I'm seeing. And yeah, some trees are putting more growth on, like this is Pekingese, and that's taller than the Pekingese. Tends to be a little bit taller, or at least throw some more outliers, and Pekingese, I believe, has pecan genetics in it. And look, there's a 5 leaflet, a couple 5 leaflets, which is pretty rare for Badger Set genetics. So there's some interesting things just to be learned from here. And yeah, look how tall those pecans are. It's insane. So second flushes, I want to be breeding these northern genetics for second flushes. That said, I don't want too much pecan in the population because then it may not do well in the north. So it's, yeah, how do we get a population that has F1s by F1s to get that kind of more recombinant rapid growth for the north.